G'day everybody, how you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope you are super well. Today we're going to talk about yet again another firmware release for the Z9, and this is firmware update 4.10. And especially if you are into birding and aviation photography, this firmware update is especially exciting to you. Let's get into it. This firmware just released takes us from 4.01 to 4.10. And we can see here that all that's been added is just one simple line. But for many photographers out there, this one line is going to mean an awful lot. And what Nikon has done in the AF subject detection options is added birds, which has never been seen before. And they have also added airplanes, which of course is already found in the Z8. Now, Steve Perry has had a sneak peek of this firmware a few days prior to release and has a video out already stating that the bird AF subject detection as an option will be appearing in Z8 sometime in the first half of 2024. So this gives us a little bit of an insight as to what the lead times are when putting together firmware. But back to the Z9. And back to what this does for bird photographers. Let's have a look at how the menus have changed. I'm going to download it and install it. Now here's my Z9 with version 4.00 of the firmware. We did have a 4.01 just a few weeks ago, but I didn't get around to updating that. So here we are, we're going to update it. Now HDMI is turned off during that process. So when we come back to it 6 or 7 minutes later, we can see that 4.10 is installed. If we go into the photo shooting menu and then into AF subject detection options, we can clearly see that bird detection and airplane detection are now there. This is very, very exciting for birders, and what Steve Perry has indicated is that when in bird mode, it seems to be most of the time much stickier, much faster at eye detect, giving the photographer more assured outcomes. He does say there are certain circumstances where that is not the case, and he still reverts back to general animal detect, which is still there. Steve also says he knows he will be asked how does it compare to Sony and Canon, and he says, of course, this is a new firmware. He is testing a pre-release version. He has only had 24 hours. He hasn't been able to do full testing, but he thinks it is in line, commensurate with, similar to, the same as Canon and Sony. As I always suggested when the AF conversation came up during the Z6 and Z7 days, I always suggested that Nikon would get there. It was simply a matter of time. You have to put resources into algorithms to refine them, to improve them. It takes time. And of the three large companies, Canon, Sony, Nikon are by far the smallest. And I suppose there's a couple of interesting things that we can take from this firmware release. The first one was that people who owned Z9s complained that the Z8 had aeroplane detect, and why was it not in the Z9? Well, here we are 4 or 5 months later, and it is in the Z9. The next thing that we can take from this is, as we've said before, bird detect is now in the Z9, but it is not in the Z8. But in this particular case, Nikon have actually telegraphed, they have informed us that bird detect will be coming in later firmware updates for the Z8. So further, what that tells us is that there will be more updates for the Z8. Now, of course, firmware updates is something that I have speculated on a lot, and the fact that we continue to see updates for the Z9 and the fact that we have now been told we will see an update of some size for the Z8, this bodes extremely well for both cameras and the fact that they will continue to be tweaked and improved. I'm super excited yet again about what is in store for the XP7 platform. Nikon haven't forgotten other cameras, but it was hardly worth mentioning the recent very, very small update to the Z5, which simply fixed a problem when the camera was off for a long time. And as I recently joked, you can only work out if there's a bug which is caused by a camera being off for a long time. That can only be found out if the camera is off for a long time. So this bug took a little while to find. And of course, Z6 II and Z7 II users might have something to say about yet again another Z9 improvement. Keep in mind, Nikon's job is to ensure that their flagship, their most expensive camera, is their most powerful camera. And Z6 and Z7, even so they are not cheap cameras, they are more affordable cameras, and they are also much older cameras, and they are from a previous generation of processor, which I will remind everyone yet again, it is 10 times slower than the two XPEED 6s in the Z7 II. The XPEED 7 is that fast. So there is literally only so much that they can do with the Z6 II and the Z7 II. But I will say never when it comes to these firmware updates for the Z6 II and the Z7 II. I do think there's every chance that something might happen, and I equally think there is every chance that something might not happen. We just don't know. In wrapping up this video, I look forward to hearing from various other channels who are dedicated bird photographers and what they think of this update. But looking at what Steve Perry showed us, it certainly seems in certain circumstances very, very sticky and seems to be working very, very well. I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love to know if you've installed it. Please let us all know in the comments below, what do you think of this update? But it does show that Nikon continue to improve on what they created in the Z9. And again, what I find most exciting about all of this is where will firmware updates end? Will it be 5.0, 6.0, and so on? We just don't know. Love to hear from you in the comments below. If this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. So please do subscribe, please share, and please like. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And the next one is a cracker. All right. Bye for now.